All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about Square Enix because some strange stuff is going on at this company. On one hand, they give us some pretty awesome games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which had Triangle Strategy come out. But on the other hand, they give us things like Marvel's Avengers and Babylon's Fall. And the two things that has in common is, one, they're live service games, and two, they kind of feel like they weren't originally planned to be live service games, making me wonder what exactly is going on at Square. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So let's head over here. This is Babylon's Fall's Metacritic page, and finally got enough reviews in to give it a score. Currently sitting at a 41, and it's not one of those situations where critics think one way and then users and gamers think another. No, 41, Metacritic score 2.3 for a user score. That's on 89 ratings. 12 reviews, though, on Metacritic. And it just seemed like no one was that interested in reviewing it in the first place. I mean, there's a free demo out, which I did play, by the way, just because I had to see what we were dealing with here. And it's not good. Like, it's very odd because it's Platinum Games, and you figured they would get something like the combat right. And that's not even very good. It's very cumbersome just to be able to control this game. And that's the one thing that I'll give Platinum credit for, is they're very good at creating these action-oriented games and a control scheme that really flows nicely all the way throughout. Not here, though. You actually have to use all of the buttons on the top of your controller while also trying to manage your face buttons there. So basically the concept in Babylon's Fall, or at least the big thing they have attached to the game, is that you have weapons that kind of float on your back, and you can control those independently from your character by using L2 and R2 on the PlayStation. All right, so you're swinging around with those. You also use square and triangle for light and heavy attack with your character, what they're holding. And then in order to lock on, it was like L1, and then a dodge, it was R1, but it's not like you can kind of then, you can then shift between enemies by moving the right stick. You have to let go of the lock-on button and press it again while you're also trying to manage maybe your shield on the left side and your heavy weapon on the right side and light attack. It's all over the place. On top of that, there's a full battle pass, one paid, one free, 2 different currencies, microtransactions, cash shop, the whole deal. And it just seems like a trend that's going on at Square Enix right now, this massive chase for the next big live service game. They have a very good live service game right now, and that is Final Fantasy XIV. People absolutely love this game, and I know Lost Ark is really taking the world by storm, but this still appears to be like the most popular MMORPG right now. But they've taken a shot with games that you figure they would have just created like in the past 10, 15 years ago as just regular games. It might have some multiplayer components to it, but not like where they're trying to do the Avengers, where if you play the Avengers, it starts out well enough as what feels like a single-player action-adventure game with some mild RPG elements to it. Then you get halfway through the game, and it kind of turns into Destiny. It was very odd. It was almost like they got midway through development, and they were like, you know what? This probably needs to be a live service game because the Marvel intellectual properties to license all that is expensive, and we want to make more money on the back end. So let's add in all this extra stuff that we've seen Bungie, for example, do with Destiny 2. And it just felt so disjointed. And that's kind of what I'm looking at Babylon's Fall as, because when they first revealed that in 2018, they basically just said, hey, look, Platinum and Square, we're getting back together and we're going to make the next big title. You guys really like Nier Automata, so get ready for this one. And then 3 years later or something, they show off what looked like an early PlayStation 3 game, and then all of a sudden, it was being described as a live service. And the thing that really blows my mind about Marvel's Avengers is Crystal Dynamics made it, and to me, when I was playing the Avengers game, I was like, you know what? There's quality here when it comes to the characters, the gameplay itself, while it was lacking variety for the most part when it comes to different quests you were doing and everything there. It at least was a serviceable game from the gameplay side, and Crystal Dynamics has done some very good things in the past, like Rise of the Tomb Raider is a fantastic game. In fact, when they rebooted Tomb Raider in 2013, it was such an interesting direction for the series. They make Marvel's Avengers, and it appears that Square has just lost all confidence in, I would say, a pretty talented developer and now they're loaned out to Microsoft to help make Perfect Dark, which, I mean, hopefully that's just a better spot for them to be in. And I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Microsoft bought Crystal Dynamics and merged them in with the Initiative. But it's very odd that we get Marvel's Avengers, which clearly Square seem to have a change in direction midway through the game, and after it comes out doesn't do very well and concurrent player counts fall. Well, Crystal Dynamics, you guys can go off and we'll just loan you out to another big company. And I mean, we'll see. Maybe Perfect Dark ends up being better for it, but what a shame to see how far down the ladder Crystal Dynamics fell because of Avengers. We also had Outriders. That came in at like a 72 on Metacritic, and it wasn't like this incredible game or anything, but out of the different live service games we went through, Babylon's Fall, Marvel's Avengers, and this, it's probably better. Like, it's probably the best one out of the three, I would say. And Square actually seemed pretty happy with its performance, where they said Game Pass launch was really big for it. The player numbers exceeded expectations, and yeah, they dropped it into Game Pass, which is something they probably should have done with several titles, like Marvel's Avengers, and if Babylon's Fall, they could have made a deal for PlayStation Now. That might have helped. But it just seems like Square is having a hard time managing some of these games and trying to turn them into live services when they shouldn't necessarily be a live service game. In fact, I would say Marvel's Avengers actually hurt Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of sales, because the game is good. If you haven't played it, I recommend picking it up. It's almost always like $20, $25, $30. And it was a pretty fun experience, and it's nothing like the setup of Marvel's Avengers, but I feel like because of some of the poor marketing that Square did at that time when it was being shown off, some people just figured, oh, it's like Avengers. It's this live service game. It's going to have these battle passes or microtransactions, or it's going to have like this ongoing service as a big element for it, like Avengers. Not at all. But it came in below expectations for its sales, according to Square, and they're going to look to try to make it up on the back end, mostly by making it extremely cheap. Now, we've also had Square show quite a bit of interest in the idea of NFTs and play-to-earn games, as well as Metaverse, and I think they're going to try to incorporate that into a live service. I mean, what's stopping them at this point? They've already had Crystal Dynamics attempt to make a live service game randomly. They've attempted to have Platinum Games make one randomly. Neither of those worked out very well, so I'm sure they'll take a shot at something. As long as they leave Final Fantasy XIV alone, I feel like they figure they have at least that one big cornerstone, that one big successful live service game, and they can have a bunch of misses and it not necessarily hurt them as much. But we'll see how they try to incorporate that, because it seems like they're just throwing whatever they can at the wall and hoping that something sticks to this point. It's just a very strange thing to see Square do when clearly they're able to make games and sell them, as we've seen in the past, just as games, not as live services. It's this big thing that so many of these companies are so enamored with right now, is basically having to develop less and get more money, which in their mind, hey, it's less cost and yeah, more profit, because they can continue building on these games for 5, 10, even 15 years in some cases. But eventually you run into the problem that Ubisoft has, where they just have too many live service games, and they all start feeling very much the same, and players have a limited amount of time to play games. So you'll see concurrent player counts fall because they have to go on to the next big live service game, which you need concurrent player count for your live service game for it to continue and make sense. And maybe that's why when I see something like Triangle Strategy get released by Square from Team Asano, you get that sigh of relief. You're like, finally, a game that has a start and then an end point, or the next Final Fantasy VII Remake chapter, although that's kind of being stretched out now too. However, I think that has to do with the game itself, the reboot, all the resources being put in. It's costing a lot. So they want this to be a long ongoing series, which at least it's not them trying to make an MMO out of Final Fantasy VII yet. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below, because we're seeing Square do some odd things with some of their games. Babylon's Fall, Marvel's Avengers, Outriders, all of which really struggling when it comes to the live service element of things. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.